Thank you very much. Thank you to the EPA for giving me the chance to talk to you this afternoon. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. As stated, I'm the owner of Brophy Produce. We're based in Naas, and we're vegetable producers for 40 years. And I went home to a farm that was a mixed farm with cattle, sheep and cereal growing, and I was the renegade son who wanted to start a vegetable business. But my dad got behind me and he saw that maybe a little bit of diversity on the farm would help improve things. But the farming declined and the vegetable production, I suppose, escalated. We grow over 700 acres of broccoli. We have the home farm converted into an organic production. There's 40 acres of organic broccoli on 200 acres at home. And to give that perspective of scale, we're producing over 10 million plants for sale in a 5-month period. The production period for sales is mid-June to mid-November, but our business is going on all year round. We're propagating plants, we're planning, we're busy, but not as busy as we are in the 5-month period. I faced many challenges in the 40 years that I've been in business, and as a result of those challenges, I suppose I've implemented many changes in my business to adapt to a changing market, I suppose it wasn't all broccoli when I started, it was a mixed market garden, and we realised that our climate in our area was very suitable for the production of broccoli. We honed in on it and grew our business as the market expanded. However, the greatest challenge we will need to implement will be the impact that climate change is going to have on our business by a mile. The title today is Living with Climate Change in Ireland, and growing vegetables at scale in a changing climate is a challenge that needs really innovative solutions. Climate change affects our business in so many ways. I suppose you look at the widely varying precipitation patterns that we're having, going from, if you take 2018 where we had the beast from the east, and we went from all the precipitation that when the snow melted, causing all the land to be waterlogged, going then into a drought that lasted until August. And then you look at last year, we did dry February, wet March and April, really critical periods for our business for starting the season off. Then we went into 6 or 8 weeks of drought, and we were wishing and praying for rain, and our prayers were over-answered. It started raining in July and didn't stop till 2 weeks ago, and that had a profound effect on our business. But it's the extreme of these events that's causing us problems. We need rain, we need it little and often, we need heat, we need, I suppose broccoli is always described as a diva of a vegetable. It doesn't like anything too extreme in any sort of format, and but the extremes are causing us big problems. And you look at the fluctuation in temperatures, the high temperatures that they're experiencing in Europe are actually prohibiting the traditional broccoli growing areas from producing the crop. Germany used to produce a lot, and Holland, and east of England was another area. They're having huge problems. The varieties that are bred are not bred for that type of heat tolerance. We're having the flip side of that, where it's raining constantly. I collaborate with people in Spain and in Holland, and the people in Spain have told me that there wasn't meaningful rain in the Lorca region since last May. Now, I don't know how they're coping with that. They're on rationed water. They've stopped summer production of melons to use all their quota of water for their winter production of broccoli. But we also have changing pest and disease dynamics, diseases that we hadn't heard of before, pests that weren't prevalent in this country. They're coming in on the jet streams. Pest called diamondback moth. Never seen it before. Didn't really experience it until 6 years ago. Now it's becoming a huge problem for us. And some of the diseases that are coming, they're more warmer, wetter climate type diseases than we would have been used to. I was talking to a seed supplier last week, and he said seed security is becoming an issue. The seeds we buy, the production areas where they produce those, they're having to shift those into different areas. And they're areas that we don't think about. But all of these problems lead to larger crop losses for us. And that's food waste. That has a cost, both in terms of monetary cost to me as a business owner, but also an environmental cost. And it's not seen. Behind the farm gate, food waste is not really measured in this country. The supermarkets all measure what they throw out, and they look at it and they manage it really well with their slick supply chains. But behind the farm gate is a problem. So we have to address, as a business, we have to address the issues. Crop diversification, you know, diversity is everywhere in nature, but monocropping big blocks of single vegetables is not good for diversity. We know that. We work with farmers in a 25-mile radius of Naas, producing our broccoli on their farms where they're mainly cereal growers, and we're trying to bring diversity into their farms. That's our approach to that. Water management is a huge issue. I suppose managing it from a too much and a too little point of view. But when you have too much, harvesting it and using low volume irrigation when you have too little of it. Attention to soil health. I've a statement up here. The soil is the stomach of the plant. Everything goes into that plant, goes through the soil. Healthy soil, healthy plant. That has really come home to me since I've seen the organic project that we set out on in 2018. We've seen dramatic changes in the home farm, both in terms of the soil biodiversity, the resilience of the crops. We thought we'd be inundated with pests, and how would we manage when we couldn't spray them? But all the good creatures are there too. They're all doing their part, and it's not as challenging, apart from the weeds maybe. They're one big challenge. And in a wet summer like last year, particularly difficult. Research and development is very important to us, you know, breeding in drought and disease resistance into our crops. We're losing a lot of chemistry because the environmental regulations are withdrawing these chemicals. Now that's good and bad. It's good to see that, you know, these products that are not good for us are being taken off the market. However, we're depending on less and less active ingredients. And we'll need to breed in the resistance into the varieties that we're growing going forward. Agroecology, which is promoting integrated pest management. It's not just going out every day and spraying because it's 2 weeks since we sprayed last. It's looking at what the problems are, reading the weather forecasts, understanding what conditions prevail that suit particular pests and diseases, planting cover crops during the out of season so that you hold the nutrients in the top soil. Precision farming is another technique we're using. 10 years ago, my farm manager put me on the journey to this. Now, he put me way out of my comfort zone. It was a huge investment of money and resources into this. However, I have seen the results of it, and it has transformed our business. You know, we're using variable rate sensors on our machinery. We're testing all our soils every hectare. We're applying what's needed to grow that crop exactly where it's needed. We have a lot of, I suppose, weather stations in the different growing areas, so we understand if a particular soil is light in a particular area, not to apply the same amount of product in those areas. Hortimetrics, that's an acronym for measuring all our impact on the environment and the footprint that we're having, the carbon footprint we're having. We engaged on a project with Teagasc on that. If you can't measure, you can't manage, and we're trying to establish what our carbon footprint is. Policy support, this is the bit we need most help on. The impact, and it's come up here time and time again, needs cross-departmental support. It is no good for us to go to a minister and ask to remove the ban on below-cost selling. He'll say, you need to go to enterprise and innovation. They'll run the ring around, and we end up, you know, going from one department to the other. We need a complete, this has all departments need to be involved in this. The problems in the industry are many. There's an aging cohort of growers. There's very few new entrants coming into the business. The cost of investments. All our investments are site-specific. If I go and I bought a new transplanter for our business last year, it was the price of a house. If I'm not at scale, I can't justify that investment. If I make a wrong investment, it could put me out of business. So financing these site-specific investments is extremely difficult and challenging. Growing has become highly technical, and we need good technical staff along with the current labour issue we have in just getting people to harvest the crops. We have massive increases in compliance audits and registration of our businesses. And I suppose I've covered on it earlier, the loss of the plant protection cover for the crops. The grower numbers have dropped. In the year 2000, we had 400 growers. Today, there's less than 100. In my crop, broccoli, in 2018, there was a crisis meeting of broccoli growers. There was 18 people in the room. There's 6 growers left today. We have a lack of public awareness to the real problem. And I think as growers, sometimes we are our own worst enemies. It's very hard to get growers to agree. I'm a member of a producer organisation. It took me 5 years to get like-minded people in the room to start that group. And I suppose the most harmful, issue for us is the predatory pricing by the supermarkets and the below-cost selling. These are really harmful strategies that these companies engage in. And I asked the question here, are we suffering from willful deafness and blindness? We must develop a business model that aligns nature with economic activity. We must place a value on what we have, and that's a secure hort industry. We talked about the strawberries from Egypt here earlier on, but we need to have the strawberries from Ireland when the strawberries are available in Ireland and not let the industry die like it seems to be at the moment. We must embrace change, and everybody must embrace this in the way we operate our business. But we must have profitable business models. And we're shooed on by the supermarkets when we are seeing that we're making some profits. They look at it as if it's almost distasteful. But I can tell you, without profit, you have no innovation, you have no talent retention, and you have no sectoral development. And if we don't have those, we won't progress as a business, and it will not be Irish product on the shelves. And if you follow the numbers, that's the proof is there. Where am I in all of this? It's our greatest challenge to date, but I believe where there's a problem, there's an opportunity. Climate change is worldwide. It's not national, it's not local. The Spanish have their issues with the water, the Dutch and the Germans have their issue with the heat. We have our advantages, we have disadvantages. The disadvantage is sometimes too much rain. Everyone, though, needs to go on this journey together, all the stakeholders, including the buyers in the supermarkets. They currently operate on what I term a one-year sourcing strategy. I did 5 negotiations with the 5 multiples this year. I was not once asked about my environmental journey and what I was doing to mitigate climate change. That's disgraceful, it's wrong. It should be embedded into their strategy that they have a 5 and 10-year sourcing policy. The government and EU intervention is needed to start us on this trip. Food waste at farm gate level, we need a seed to society approach, not just looking at a small part of it. Carbon footprint impact measurement of businesses and carbon labelling, I think it absolutely should be there. So the person who goes into that shop can make an informed decision on what they want to buy and the impact that that's going to have on the environment. And if that's your Peruvian asparagus or your Egyptian strawberries versus your local produced, then you can make that decision and know that whether you're contributing to climate change or not by that purchase. But the ban on below-cost selling, it's counterproductive to all the efforts. We need food. We don't need food to be cheap, but it does need to be affordable. And if the hard questions are asked to the CEOs of these supermarkets, they'll never change their way unless it is asked at a high level, because the buyer is measured on his year-to-year results. He will not change unless it comes from above. And we need people to ask those questions. I'm passionate about the industry survival. Mick Kelly from GIY shares that passion and has done some great work highlighting the issues. There's a link to this for anyone that wants to go in and listen to an in-depth podcast that he has done on this very problem. The future, the business can develop approaches to deal with a lot of climatic events. However, for every 1 degree in temperature rise, we get 7% more rainfall. We can't beat this in our business of broccoli production. And there's only one strategy I'll do if we go to the 2.5 degrees of a temperature rise, and that is an exit strategy, unfortunately. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Paul. And I think lots of thoughts there that I think we will pick up in our panel discussion. And again, what struck me in your presentation, Paul, is the importance of collaboration and learning from others, including the interactions you've had with other European countries. And I think that has been a theme across all of the presentations in this session. So we will now open the floor to yourselves in terms of any questions, and we're also online as well. So I invite you to anyone with a question to just raise your hand. And while people are gathering their thoughts, oh sorry, we have one here.
Thanks. So, hi, I was just wondering, when you do adjust attitudes in the community, as down in Kerry, were people more open to other environmental awareness issues, such as their own carbon footprint, and maybe looking at, I don't know, SEI grants for solar panels? You know, did it open the door for those further discussions, even if it's not under your scope?
And what we found is definitely like to do something sociable and not make it about climate at all, and maybe slightly, you know, introduce the idea of, well, actually, for you love, you know, it's one of our most oversubscribed events of the year, and it's going to happen during Biodiversity Week on the 17th of May. We go out and we do a night walk because the toads are mating, and it's very, like, they make a big sound, you know, when the males are calling the ladies into the breeding ponds, and everyone wants to see it. But you know, Dr. Fergie Marnell from NPWS would say, you know, one of their biggest fears for the toad, and I mean, it's such a part of our place in this time of year, because you hear them for miles, like from the ponds, is that so they lay their eggs, then you have the tadpoles, and what's happening now and what they're afraid about is that the ponds will dry out before those tadpoles have had a chance to metamorphose into toadlets and get out of the pond. And so what the NPWS are now having to do is to collect the tadpoles, bring them to centres like FOTA in Cork or the Dingle Aquarium, and let them mature there, and then release them as toadlets. So, like, I suppose when you're talking about, you know, the wonderful, you know, natterjack toad, it's part of our heritage, and the fact that it's really going to be challenged, its existence will be really challenged with climate change. That's how you start that conversation. But, you know, we really haven't, we did a Gardening for Nature session last year. We've also actually had a meeting where we called people who are interested in bulk buying EV panels. But this Climate Action, Creative Ireland Climate Action project is really going to be us starting to look at mitigation. Yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I do think there is a responsibility in all of us as well, that we're not going to solve the climate crisis without solving the biodiversity crisis. So when we are out there starting those conversations, if we have that opportunity to engage with people, we do need to bring in the biodiversity crisis as well with that.
Is that on? Testing? Oh, great. Hi, Grania, Climate Action Manager in Antashka, and I'm afraid my question is also for Martha. So with your upcoming project, great to see you've got the Creative Ireland funding. Is there anything built in to look at the kind of social return on investment? I know you mentioned the social cohesion and inclusion, but obviously there's been big economic benefit from the chestnut fencing, preventing road closures. Is that something that could be incorporated?
I mean, I suppose we are going to hopefully rely on experts to come down and to really paint as vivid a picture as we can and make it as real as we can. We will have coastal geomorphologists, we will have social scientists. You know, we're hoping that we can convince, you know, our Met Éireann colleagues who are from Tralee to come and visit us as well. And I suppose engage with the artists. We have a project designer and ourselves, we're co-creating this. Before our launch, we sent out a questionnaire to everyone in the community. We hand-delivered it. And we 2 questions. What do you value most about Maharees? And what would you like the future Maharees to be? And we're going to go back to them at different stages over the course of this project, because some of them will just say, rock armour, I want rock armour around the whole of the Tombolo, and that's just not practicable. It probably won't even be a solution for sea level rise. But I mean, to sort of start with, let's start with what the majority of people would like to see, and then let's go and co-create a plan with them. So I don't know, again, if that's answering your question, but we are trying to really draw in every aspect of climate change and what it will mean.
Okay, we just have some online question and then I'll come back into the room.
Great. This one is for Paul from Carl Richards, asking what are the potential opportunities that you see for Irish horticulture producers, considering the impact that climate change will have on other producing countries as well?
I suppose the crops that we grow here in Ireland, as long as we can continue growing them, we need to sustain that. That's our biggest problem at the moment, is that we're being replaced by imported product from cheaper producing countries, but they have a higher climate impact. I mean, product produced down in Spain has a much higher environmental impact than something that's grown locally. I think, you know, people talk about new crops coming in. Our expertise is in doing what we're doing. We need to protect that and not have us pitched against somebody that has a daily lower price. If the question is asked from the buyers to the suppliers of that product, you know, what's your environmental impact of the crop that you're growing in the place you're growing it? It's a far more important question than what's your price on the day.
Okay, and here at the front.
Frank Convery. Paul, I think, I'm a huge fan of the carbon footprint labelling idea. Within the European Union, Denmark is by far the most advanced in moving that agenda. The European Commission has dropped the ball completely. But I would strongly urge you to do it yourself. I mean, I know there's another layer of stuff to be doing, but I think it goes back to the learning by doing theme of this whole process. That the science-based. There's a kind of, I'd roll that ball out, because if you don't do it, nobody's going to do it. So you have to start and make a few mistakes, and then get it going. And it also, I think, will get you into the news, because that consumers will read things. You know, I think it's something you really should just take on. I would read up on what the Danes are doing, because they're in nearly every area they're ahead of us, and this is one of them. Yeah, that hortimetrics project is what we started on that. Now that was a collaboration with Chagas and a company in the UK. It was way above my pay grade, and the information they requested from me was stuff I hadn't even considered as to be my impact on the environment. You know, it was way back up the supply chain of our inputs. But you're right, we do need to start on that journey ourselves, and maybe I mean, that producer organisation, maybe that's something as a group we should do, and that'd be our USP as a group. And just a quick question for David. I mean, traditionally there's quite a bit of tension and challenge with adjacent local authorities about actions and so on. And I'm just wondering how you navigate that with the, say, Cork County, Cork City, and obviously a lot of these projects will spill over jurisdictions and so on. I mean, is it an issue, and if so, how do you manage it?
I can only speak from the Cork City's perspective, Cork City and Cork County, and I suppose we've been very fortunate that we have been engaging together since 1970, as it happens. 1970 we produced the Land Use and Transportation Study, which was a joint approach from the two local authorities together to looking at land use and transportation across the joint metropolitan area. That was followed in 2000 by CASP, the Cork Area Strategic Plan. So again, we continue right up to this day to work together, because as was mentioned earlier, climate doesn't respect any boundaries, whether they be national or local boundaries. And so it's important that when we are delivering adaptation and mitigation, that it is a cross-boundary, and that is something that we are very, very keen to do and are delivering in Cork.
Just beside you there. Yeah.
Brian Crowley from the Irish Green Building Council. Just for David, I was wondering how you find collaboration within the council when you're bringing forward SUDS methods in regards to tackle fluvial and pluvial, because what we find is the management team don't want to deal with more trees because they'll have to clean up more leaves. And the road engineers want to keep their roads nice and wide. So how do you manage that conversation within the council and to tackle the water issues with it?
Yeah, I think in fairness, local government has been to the forefront in relation to responses to climate change. But you're correct, you're dealing with a situation whereby you need to get people out of their silos. They're looking at managing roads, they're looking at managing water, they're looking at managing green areas. They need to be thinking broader than that. And it is almost, I'd call it a re-education. You need to go in and you need to engage with the individual sections, the individual divisions, and explain the cross-cutting impacts, why something that might be slightly more laborious from their perspective actually has a greater impact across society. So if you take a look at our management of green areas, we no longer use any glyphosate and haven't for a number of years. It has meant quite a significant difference in our green areas. They don't look like lovely, lush green lawns anymore, but there is a general acceptance that there is a much better biodiversity delivery from the way we manage those green areas. Now you still get some people who still want to go back and they want everything completely weed-free, but in general we have massive support right across all the different sections to changing the way we work so that we can deliver on biodiversity, climate, natural water management, etc. But there is a massive re-education that has happened and is ongoing and will have to continue.
I think sometimes as well, though, it is about the public sector is known for it. There's the silos within the public sector. So I think sometimes it's not about the science or the actions. It's about the governance and the implementation of whatever strategic plan that you have. And it's something it was a huge issue for us in terms of our climate action plan. We kept on being told, okay, we'll develop KPIs. And for some, it just wasn't sitting. It's like, it's not the finance department's role to lead on green procurement because everyone needs to have that in their mindset. So we actually ended up bringing in, it was an objectives and key results, it's an OKR framework. And the beauty of that was each of our climate action projects now is delivered by a cross-departmental team of who's involved. So say, for example, the hydrotreated vegetable oil has finance in terms of procurement, it has ourselves in climate, it has operations plus it's on the barrow, and it has technical services plus our M&E. And they all come together as one grouping, they deliver the trial, the group disbands. And the learnings from that are then scaled up. But that is the thing, I think it's back to the fact that the science is there, the strategies are there, really it's the psychology and the culture of how we do it, I think is the last big stumbling block for us reaching our targets.
I think you make a very important point around structures. So in Cork City Council, we deliberately do not have a climate change directorate because what we were very concerned, if you have a climate change directorate, everybody goes, that's their problem. I don't need to worry about climate change anymore. Roads is fine, roads is over there, climate change is over there. So we have these cross-cutting teams. Everybody is responsible for climate change, not one director and their staff. So it is an item on all the management team agendas, but there is also, we have a climate action team that is the staff meet together, but we also have a climate action committee of council, which is cross-cutting across all the other different committees of council that manage the political side, and then the staff side is also managed through the team.
Martha.
And I would also add, though, to help that, behavioural change along, from a community perspective, the citizens have a role to play too, because I know from speaking to our engineer, they don't have many people phoning up saying, I'm delighted that you set trees there. They have people phoning saying, there were trees on my footpath. If I slip on those trees, then you are going to be held accountable. So I think, there's probably a lot of the citizens of this country who are seeing climate action taking place and being facilitated by state agencies and our local authorities. We're not probably giving them the credit. They're not hearing that we're delighted about it. They're just hearing people who are not happy about something.
Okay, and we'll take one final question just from the back.
Marianne Harris. Just a question or a comment. We heard this morning in the introduction to the whole session about how the Irish population is very concerned about climate change, high percentages in fact, and they care and they're worried. But then we're hearing at the end of the day from Paul about the supermarkets don't even ask the question of an organic farmer about how he's environmentally sustainable. Obviously, they don't think their customers do care about climate and the environment. Otherwise, they would be asking those questions. They believe, for some reason, it's all to do with price, and that's it. And the race to the bottom, as we say. And then we're hearing community initiatives across the board where people do care and are taking action. So I'm just wondering, at the end of the day, maybe for the panel, how do we get that message to the right people that the results are there, that people do care, and they want something done, and maybe that disconnect or greenwashing even, the supermarkets who are telling you buy Paul's vegetables because you should get your 5 a day for your health, but they're not connecting it back to health and environment.
An excellent question for the end of today.
I think, like Paul, that is like that their own worst enemy in getting the word out there. But a lot of the time, like be it in the commercial sector or in the community sector as well, you're spending so much time getting the work done that it's another job on top of that to get the word out there. But unfortunately, it is a key thing. And for example, like Tidy Towns are great at it. In terms of social media, it does get it out there. Like Tidy Towns have been championing the Sustainable Development Goals long before anyone else because it was part of the competition. I think a lot of it is, and again, it's coming back to the social sciences, but also the communications and the arts. How do you get information out there in bite-sized chunks when seemingly all we have is a 13-second attention span now on social media, but to get that positive news story out there to show that lots of people are doing this. In fact, there's 920 entrants to the Tidy Towns competition. They're all doing things in the biodiversity, the climate change, the circular economy, sustainability spheres. But asking them to get that out there on top of that, and I know there was a question from Antashka about what's the impact, impact assessment is so complicated, and then it's like put on the carbon labelling. And I do think this is where central government and the public agencies need to come in and go, right, you're doing a huge amount of good work. We're going to champion that, and we're going to tell everyone about it. But sometimes adding it as another job on top of the good work that people out there are doing, I do think we need to help. We do need to help the community sector. We need to help all sectors. But I think as public authorities, the responsibility, a large part of it does lie with us.
And my background is marketing, so I'm well aware of the importance of getting the message out, and that's how we get a lot of funding from, affluent people who love Maharis. We get big donations from them because they can see what we're doing. But actually, while I do believe that obviously communication is important, in our experience, nothing changed until we made the hard calls. So we didn't ask people nicely, can you please maybe not walk on the sand dunes? We just fenced them off so they couldn't walk on the sand dunes. And even though at the start it was difficult for some people to realise that they couldn't drive onto the sand dune anymore, as they might have been doing for 30 years before that, once they could see, I suppose, the result, they sort of bought in then. It took them a little bit of time, but I think generally everyone would say we did the right thing. And I think it's the same with climate. I mean, we all know what has to be done. It's almost like, chicken, a game of chicken at this stage. Like, are we waiting for the public to knock down the doors of Leinster House and demand action? Like, I just don't know if that's ever going to happen. So I think you make the calls, the right calls, you communicate around it, which is what we're doing, and we'll look back in a decade or 2 decades' time and say, yeah, we did the right thing. But at the moment, it's a waiting game, isn't it?
Paul?
Well, I think we normally, I'd sort of diverse a little bit, but to do with the supermarkets and they're not asking the right questions, they've had their head in the sand because it has suited them. They have a capitalistic nature of making money, and if anyone like me does the right thing, I actually get penalised, because if I leave a hedgerow with wildflowers in it, I've less of a crop yield with the same costs, so I'm not rewarded for that. But I think we need to go back a step. We need to get, if the public asks the question, the supermarkets will respond to it, and that needs to go back to the education, to the schools, to the kids asking their mother, eating in season, understanding seasonality, So it's a little bit of an education thing. But that's where I said earlier on it was cross-departmental. It's all departments, not just agriculture and environment and
yeah, and I think everybody has mentioned the word information. I think it's providing the information so people can make the informed decisions. I mean, if you go into a shop, a supermarket now, you look at 3 or 4 different varieties of broccoli or suppliers broccoli. You have no idea which is the best for you to choose if you want to make the decision, because there is no information. So I think people do want to make informed decisions, but in a lot of cases, not just in food, but in all the decisions they're trying to make, they can't make those informed decisions because they don't have the information provided to them. So I think providing information is critical.
Okay. So on that note, we will bring session 4 to a conclusion. So I'd like you to show your appreciation for our 4 speakers this afternoon. And it also brings today's event to an end as well. I'd like to thank you all for joining us online, and those of you who joined us here in Dublin Castle. I think we had some great discussion. We heard some really good speakers, and I think we're going away with lots of food for thought. So thank you very much for attending.